Hi, everybody. Hope everyone had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. All right, today, how our environment hardwires the human mind. Scarcity versus prosperity explained. So what if who we become has less to do with willpower and more to do with the environment we live in? So there was a study, and it's fascinating. It was done by a private group. And there was two groups of people, same backgrounds, same potential. And one group was placed in a thriving, prosperous environment. They began to flourish, more confident, more hopeful, more productive. And the other group, they were placed in an environment marked by poverty, lack, crime, and almost immediately they began to mirror it. Like thinking small, feeling unsafe, seeing themselves as limited. The same people, different outcomes, and why is that? Because humans adapt to the environment that they are immersed in, and it's true. They've done many studies about this, and also environments have energy. There's an energy, and because we're energy and we're mirrors, we start to mirror and take in those energies. So this is one of the most underappreciated truths about human life. And no, a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but it is true. And we become the environment we constantly see, feel, and experience. The mind is not a sealed vault. It's a sponge. If you live in a place that feels hopeful, your nervous system encodes safety, your creativity starts to open, it's very open around you, and you act with possibility, like you see, like in your environment, like terrain is there and it's beautiful and everybody that works there is creative and it's gorgeous and you have beautiful shops, and not that shopping is everything, but how about like a really nice organic restaurant, and it's all farm to table. You start to see things like that. It's beautiful. The food is great and stuff like that. And then if you live in a place that feels unsafe, neglected, or hostile, your body hardwires that same feel. It does. It starts to feel unsafe, and you start to feel a little bit scared, and your thoughts start to narrow, and your survival becomes the story you live by. So you know what, I don't really feel safe here. You start to put like a camera out. Like everybody on my block has cameras. Like I had a man that walked behind my house and jumped the fence, and I had a camera back there because I don't feel safe around my neighborhood whatsoever. I mean, I've never even lived in a neighborhood like this in my life. People yelling and, saying things that are strange, and it's just, I've never had that before. But this is what brought this subject up, was because it's really true. So I started diving into it, and I started looking into it. And I started to read studies, and government has done studies. They don't tell all the truth, but then I found studies from private organizations that have done studies on environment and thriving environments versus non-thriving environments. So this is not to blame any particular people. It's about reorganizing just how deeply environment shapes our inner wiring. And it does. And we have to talk about this. And a lot of people, oh, I don't want to go there because, this isn't nice. You're judging. No, we have to talk about this. And if you have a family and you have children, you should be talking about this to them and giving them leverage into understanding environments and how the mind works and how much control that they really have. And knowing this, if I had children, I would be like a machine with them, informing them on it, all kinds of things. And that's just the way that I am, because I've had to figure it out all on my own. Because I wasn't, close to with my family. So now let's dive in. Scarcity versus the prosperity mindset. When we talk about economics, many assume that it's the money that's the problem, right? Oh, well, it's about laziness or lack of discipline. But study shows something else. Scarcity itself hijacks the mind. It's an idea. And people live by that idea from the day that they're born and raised in a family that maybe had the scarcity. Money doesn't grow on trees, kids. That type of thing, And so, money's hard. And what happens is it hijacks their mind for their whole life. Their whole life. And when you're in scarcity, people become impulsive. Not because, they're reckless, but because survival kicks in. It requires immediate trade-offs, and they believe it. So therefore, because I see scarcity, I've seen it my whole life. This is what, I'm not saying this. Other people, I've heard them say it. And there's a trade-off with that. And in prosperity, people think long-term. Not because they're smarter, but because they feel safe enough to make that plan. Yeah, because it's not always about, I know people that have graduated from, some of the best schools, and they live in scarcity. And, they say the reason why they went to, let's say, an Ivy League school was to make more money. But then they things happen, I don't know. But then I've seen people that quit high school and made a multi-million-dollar empire that left high school. And so so it's not about that. It's a mindset. And in prosperity, people think the long term. That's what they do. So the difference isn't intelligence, it's a bandwidth. And scarcity consumes the mental bandwidth. Prosperity frees it. Try not to think so much in terms of money right now. Yes, you can think it if you want it, but you want to. But, it really think about the scarcity mindset versus the prosperous mindset. What does that mean? Right? So this is why the phrase money is hard to make, or there's not enough. There just isn't enough to go around. This is where I think crime and corruption comes from. It becomes like a mental program. It does. It gets hardwired for the rest of people's lives, and they never get out of it. It's a prison. It's not just an idea. It doesn't just become an idea. It's reinforced daily by what people see around them in their environment. One person doesn't take care of their house, so the next person says, the hell with it. I'm not going to take care of my house. Look at all these houses up this street. Only 1 or 2 out of 20 take care of their front yard. So yeah, I'll be one of the, 18 that doesn't take care of their house. I don't know, something like that, people think. But how environments hardwire us. Environment shapes us in 3 different ways. 1, through sight, what you see, what we constantly see, clean streets versus neglected streets, open businesses versus closed ones, tells the brain what's possible. It does. Two, through feeling. The emotions that rise in the environment, fear, safety, belonging, hostility, become our baseline chemistry. The body changes. The chemistry in our body, the biological body, it shapes right around that environment. Just bam, it just holds on, and it starts to believe this is just the way that it is. There's nothing we can do about it. Live in stress long enough, and your cortisol feels normal. Live in hope long enough, and your optimism feels natural. 3, through narrative. Every environment whispers a story. Here's a couple little blurbs. Here people rise. Here people stay stuck. Here people survive. And without realizing it, we begin to repeat the story as our own. And then people take that on. They're just like, well, this is just the way that it is. We get rid of our grass and we replace it with just big gray stone from Home Depot and just flood your whole front yard with stone. No grass, no nothing. Because, water's expensive, right? This is what people say. And it goes into that. It starts to crawl into areas where you're doing things that, if you didn't have a scarcity mindset, you would look at things a little bit differently, right? So why this matters, this should give us compassion and not judgment. This is why I said at the beginning, I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm trying to bring this subject up so that we have better potential as a human being, and that we can see when our hardwire isn't working for us, that we need to make that change, right? If someone is stuck in cycles of lack, it's often not because they're incapable, it's because their environment has been rehearsing scarcity into their nervous system for years. So from childhood to adult, people born that way, die that way. I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying that's, you start to see that, like nothing changes. And like one time I was in Pennsylvania, and we were with the Amish, and we were talking to the parents of this big Amish family. And anyways, we started to ask for a story from them, and they told us their story and how small the farm was, and then they had like 10 children. And the children took the farm and turned it into an incredible, thriving farm. And I was like, well, that's that's wonderful. And they said, yeah, so we never thought about doing that. We wanted to keep it, kind of family and where it took care of us, but our children wanted to grow it. So see the difference? I mean, not that they were in scarcity, but they had children, then the children took it up steps, right? And made it thriving. And they're doing incredible. I mean, they make furniture there, beautiful wood furniture. They have organic, one part's organic, they have milk, it's incredible. It was so beautiful. So that's kind of like, you look at it like that, right? So the next thing is, but the reverse can also be true, right? So shift the environment and the person shifts. That's the story of kind of like the Amish people. They wanted to keep it small and just for the family, and then they had the 10 kids and they made the shift. This is why some thrive when they move. True. Why kids who change schools flourish all of a sudden. One school they were doing poorly, and the next they moved the kid to maybe a private school or maybe a new school system, and all of a sudden the kid's like straight A's. And the parents, it's not that the parents are bad. The parents are like wondering, why are you doing so bad in school? Maybe the kid doesn't want to say, I'm getting beat up on the side, or I'm getting bullied. That happens. Or why one job can feel suffocating and another liberating, right? And then humans adapt. And adaptation works both ways. So practical insights. So what do we do with this knowledge? One, we curate a micro environments. So even if you can't change the whole street, you can change your home, your design. You can design a new home. You can a new room in the home. You can maybe make an area that signals prosperity in your home, right? Like possibility. Like maybe you'll do like your living room, one area in the living room, and make it really, nice. That's what I do. I like to make my home nice. And I work with my gardener, and we do little projects out in the yard. So 2, interrupt that story of scarcity. When you catch yourself thinking, this is just how it is, pause, wipe it out, and ask, is this me, or the story this environment is speaking through me? So you have to look at that. 3, choose your belonging. If an environment constantly erodes your peace, it's not weakness to move. You have to move. You have to get out immediately. It's wisdom. If you're not fitting that energy and that environment, it'll most likely take you gone. It'll ruin you. Maybe the people are not right on have the same brightness, or they're kind of a little bit negative or something. Just like a plant needs sunlight, humans need environments that nourish growth. So this is these are my thoughts, and this is how kind of the study wrapped up, is that this study showed something simple, and yet I think it's very profound personally, that humans are not just individuals. We're not. We're adapters. We mirror everything. We mirror what we're surrounded by. We do. That's why marriage, who you marry, is very important, because you're going to mirror that person if you're not careful. If you marry someone that, maybe, I don't know, but if the person is fun and positive and honest, you're going to mirror that, and you're going to have a beautiful spiritual marriage. Okay, that's so that's not weakness, it's survival, right? And but it also means this: if we place ourselves in an environment of hope, love, and possibility, we will rise to match it. And if we cannot find that environment, we can begin creating it right now. One small act of care, one corner of beauty in the home or outside a little garden, or one rewritten story at a time. Rewrite your story. Because in the end, the environment shapes the mind. But the mind can also reshape the environment. And that is hope. Thanks, everybody. And I'll see you at the next video. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.